Many of you know or remember Nella Kennedy, who formerly taught art history at Northwestern and was curator of the college's archives. Even in her absence, she graces the museum tonight with something of a reader's theater she's written, which will tell us much about Orange City's most famous medical doctor, a Dutch immigrant like others, but a unique personality. From the windows she opens, we'll see and hear much about Orange City in its earliest years. The doctor's name seems more French than Dutch, de l'Espinasse. And it was, but he was Dutch, a progressive, a liberal, to put it mildly, in a village full of afscheiden, very conservative Hollanders, men and women who took their faith so seriously, they left the Netherlands to put Dutch progressives like de l'Espinasse behind him. He was, however, also a greatly respected medical doctor. Now, the story wanders back and forth through the years, but it begins here in Orange City, in the present, with two high school kids chatting about a history assignment they believe to be a little, well, stodgy. Write a paper on an early Orange City doctor named Adolf Frederick Henry de l'Espinasse.
So, what did you find out about the guy?
How the heck do you pronounce his name?
De l'Espinasse.
He a French guy?
Half Swiss or French and half Dutch. All about Orange City history, alright? Got any French friends?
How'd you ever figure out how to pronounce it?
Grandma?
She knew him?
Try not to be an idiot, Isaac. The doctor is like way older.
How old?
You know, dinosaurs.
Don't be cute.
Like the first years that white folks even lived here. The original Tulip Festival types.
Stupid project anyway. As if anybody cares. Why didn't she assign us somebody like Maddie Poppy? Somebody from the real world. She was great on American Idol.
She's like yesterday.
What's wrong with yesterday? I know something about yesterday.
This is a history class, moron.
Don't remind me.
We're stuck with him, alright?
What's his name again?
De l'Espinasse. His name is the esteemed Dr. Adolf Frederick Henry de l'Espinasse.
Am I gonna have to say that?
We're stuck with him, Isaac. You interested, or are you going to act like a typical guy and make me do all the work?
Well, what you got?
This is Wikipedia. Let's just call him AFH, okay?
No kidding.
AFH was a physician in Orange City from 1874 to 1881. I know, may as well have been the Dark Ages.
You mean it's not?
This is what I've got. He came to Orange City in 1874 with two daughters, leaving his oldest daughter behind in the Netherlands.
What'd she stay behind for?
She didn't want to leave, I guess. Her name was Frederique Antoinette.
Kid with problems, I bet.
Listen to the names of the other two. The ones who came with him to Orange City. Albertine Everdina Johanna and Adolfina Frederica.
They dropped all that once they came ashore, I bet.
And there was a brother. Came to America a few years later. Also became a doctor. Listen, another really wild name. Heisbert Adolf Frederick. Some of these names are doubled up, like Adolf and Adolfina.
Did everybody hang their kids with names like that? You'd need a billboard for name tags.
My great-grandma was just called Mina. She was born in Holland. And I got this too, a book Grandma owned, called The Bells of Helmus. Look who wrote it.
I still can't pronounce her last name.
Kobe is our doctor's great-granddaughter-in-law. I guess you could say. She wrote a novel, 1934, I think. It's about Orange City, although I guess Orange City isn't mentioned by name.
Horror, I bet. Vampires marching into church or something?
You know, kind of. My grandma says her mother told her that Orange City got way mad about the book because it's made them out to be totally gossipy and self-righteous hypocrites.
Hey, where can I get a copy?
You haven't read a book since you were 6, maybe. And then they were read to you. When the novel was published, she lived out in Oregon, which was probably good for her health.
No kidding. They'd have lynched her on the courthouse lawn. And at Tulip Festival.
Don't be a jerk.
She wouldn't have been parade marshal, I bet.
Listen, Isaac, I've got news. Wikipedia has just a little bit about the dad, but it's mostly about his son Heisbert, who took over the old man's practice. Bad news is, what Wikipedia has is not much help. Ready for some distress? We have to find out everything ourselves.
We're talking 150 years ago.
Right.
And we do what? Go to the cemetery some night and wake up the dead?
He did not practice medicine all that long here, only 6 years, and his son took over when he died. That was in 1881. And when his son left, his half-brother took over, and that de Lespinasse was named for his papa, Adolf Frederick Henry de Lespinasse.
Could we just call him Henry?
How'd you know that?
What?
That people call him Henry.
I got some smarts.
Well, we're going to put those smarts to work.
Me too?
Yes, you too. I'm not your maid. Besides, our Henry is not your run-of-the-mill Orange City dude, you know. Who knows what kind of buried treasures we might uncover.
All right. What's next?
Oh, and this too. Grandma also heard that AFH was like way controversial. So different from everybody else. Very, like, out there in religious views. And on top of everything else, hyper opinionated, and he couldn't stop writing.
Cool.
He was the best university-trained doctor Orange City had way back when. How about this? I'll go to the museum, and you go to the college archives. We'll see what we can find, and then Tuesday maybe we'll get together and figure out where to go from where we're at.
I'm still thinking about a cemetery tour. Raising the dead some night.
Will you get serious?
And now imagine an 1888 house in Orange City, a little different from ordinary interiors maybe. There's a violin case lying on the cabinet and a bookcase next to the window, and the bookcase is overflowing. The room is dark, the shades partially drawn, candles and lamps lit, and there's a coffin across the room. The lid is open. These two women wear black hats, veils covering their faces. They're sitting side by side. A funeral will begin soon, right there in the home. On your left sits Albertine de Lespinasse, one of the doctor's daughters. And on the right is Frederica, another.
Heisbert sent Papa's obituary to the Dutch papers. I've translated it for the Sioux County Herald. Listen, how does this sound? Died on March 27, 1881, the worthy and very learned gentleman, Adolphe, well, you know that, physician and obstetrician in Orange City, 62 years old. I so hope Heisbert will arrive soon. It's such a long trip from Wisconsin, even by train.
That he and his wife will take over Father's practice is such a very good thing. I wonder if our sister will come from the Netherlands. Perhaps she does not want to leave Papa's second wife. I still can't call her mother.
If we had stayed in the Netherlands, I might have gotten used to it, you know, maybe in time. But Miss Kuipers was his wife for only 2 years before we left, and he left without her. She stayed behind, and now Papa is gone. I wish I had asked him why he left our stepmother. At least our sister stayed behind with her.
It will hard to be without Father. I'm an orphan at 16.
We will so miss him. He won't be at my wedding either. In just 17 days, I'll become Mrs. Isaac Stecklenburg. I will be a bride without Papa. It's still hard to imagine.
Can you wear a white wedding gown? Maybe you should stay in black.
Father hated conventions. White for weddings. Don't just follow along like sheep, he might say. He was so wild, so independent.
He would have let you wear orange stockings, anything you want. He had no stomach for the customs of the townspeople, and they're stuck in the mud ways.
And what's going to happen when I meet with the stone carver? He'll be terrified when I ask him to chisel Freemason symbols on Father's tombstone.
I remember the square. What was the other again?
The square and a set of compasses. Father could barely talk at the last, but he had to get that request out. Must have that symbol on my stone of Freemasonry. Oh, Orange City won't like it. They are dead set against Freemasonry. But you heard me, I promised.
He was so proud of being a Freemason.
He'd risen far up the ladder, too, before we left Holland. Highest degree or something.
You're 7 years older than I am. I don't remember much about the old country. Was he happy with Miss Kuiper's, stepmama?
I don't think so. He never explained to us why we went to America, to Chicago, so very, very far away. Sometimes I think maybe that was his way out of what he'd gotten himself into with Miss Kuiper's.
But we needed help in Chicago to take care of us. Is that not so? You were 12. I was only 5. It was a good thing he found Charlotte in Chicago. She was just Miss Bax. He needed a housekeeper.
Papa did not marry her until we lived in Shenandoah after his divorce. And now little Henry, who's only 6 years old, what a sad thing to lose both mother and father in 2 years. I don't think he'll remember them when he grows up.
When Geisbert gets here, I'm going to ask all kinds of things I never dared ask Father. Things about family, about us, and about his writing, his medical career, and his influence. In the Netherlands, he was an important writer, wasn't he?
What we need to do now is simply put his body to rest, Frederica. Papa needs to rest.
As Colby the novelist knew, a little gossip can go a long way over the teacups of Orange City. Let's just review a bit. De L'Espanasse was a proud Freemason at a time in Dutch American history when churches split over admitting members who came anywhere near a lodge. He was also a writer of some significant repute in the Netherlands. As his daughter said, Dr. de L'Espanasse didn't give a hoot for convention, certainly wasn't well reformed. He left a wife in the Netherlands when he and 2 of his children came to America, and when he lived in Chicago, he hired a woman named Charlotte Box to take care of his young daughters, and eventually he married her, and they had a son together. As Albertine just said, Charlotte Box preceded him in death. That he didn't gather the love and favor of Orange City churches should surprise no one. He was, as they might have said, a man very much of the world, at a time when that phrase, attached to your reputation, could mean a visit from the elders. Now we're off to Haarlem, the Netherlands, and it's 1881. The woman on the left is Frederica Antonetta, the daughter who did not come to America with the rest of the family, and on the right is Ida Kuipers de L'Espanasse, wife number 2, who lived with the doctor for only 2 years before AFD pulled up stakes, left in a hurry, and emigrated to America. We may just pick up a bit more of the story here. They're reacting to his death, an ocean away.
Such a terrible, terrible shock. Father dead at 62? In her last letters, Albertina mentioned he was not feeling well, suffering from bronchitis. But to think of him dead?
Your poor sisters, and on their own in that wilderness, in that uncivilized place. It's comforting that Geisbert and his family are going out there to live with them.
And think of little Henry, so young not to have his mother.
The less I hear about his mother, the better. I am your father's widow, and that's what I wrote in the obituary. Shenandoah, Iowa? There he was in the wilderness with his blessed housekeeper. How am I supposed to live with divorce papers from some place called Shenandoah? It's a sham. It's an outrage. Your father even put a note in our provincial paper for everybody to see. Oh, at least we're out of assault now, where my friends would talk, talk, talk. Here in Haarlem, people don't even know me. I have never told anyone about his father, an illegitimate son of a Swedish count.
You have proof of such a thing?
Not many know. Old accounts mention that the count's wife was a very close friend of the king.
To be very close to the King of Sweden, That was surely an honor.
You are, as of yet, an unmarried woman, Antoinette. There are things I don't want to explain to you now.
My own grandfather, de l'Espinasse, the son of a count. I remember him. I was 12 when he died, and when father took over his practice in Hasselt. Grandfather was the son of a count? Then who was his mother?
Your great-grandma, Anna Marie de l'Espinasse, Swiss-born. She was teaching at a French school in The Hague when she had an affair with that Swiss count, Frederick Adolf von Lohenheim, who was a diplomat at The Hague. Your grandpa, Adolf Frederick, was born in 1798. In plain fact, he was named after his aristocratic papa. The baptismal record shows him having the last name of Lohenhelm and the count as his father. But after that, his name was always de l'Espinasse.
So Papa must not have been ashamed of his birth. So I'm not either. That he used this count's name for his children is so fascinating. I am Frederica, Heisbert has Adolf Frederick as his middle names, and then Adolphine Frederica has the female form of those names. Our little half-brother is Henry, and he has his papa's full name.
You should never be ashamed. You should remember your papa as an excellent physician, none better. Though maybe here and there he was a little too wildly progressive. Oh yes, and this too, he was an excellent writer, well known for both medical and literary circles. You should be very proud of him, even though he went way out there in nowhere America.
And now we return to present-day Orange City, to Gracie's house, where the two kids continue to outline their history project, which is, of course, to discover what they can about a very unusual early Orange City physician.
So, we got the family lined up. But what about this guy? AFH himself. So, he was a talented writer. Any trashy novels I could get a hold of?
What do you think of this? A review in a very prestigious magazine in 1843 about an article he wrote on pseudo-mucous membranes in the lungs. Not too spicy, you think? Slimy, more likely. Get this. It was written in Latin.
You Googled it?
Of course. Well, tried anyway.
So, what did this Latin guy say about what our guy wrote?
My Latin isn't much. The author was talented and very good at drawing anatomical details.
Hey, I'll buy.
But he said AFH drew his conclusions too hastily.
1843. My math is no better than your Latin, but I'm thinking our guy is like just 24 years old then.
Barely a doctor. He didn't finish his medical studies until a year before. And there's more. You ready? While he was a student, he didn't write medical stuff only, but poetry and even plays.
No kidding. All about his girlfriends, I bet.
You quit. And the other stuff, poems, they were all published too.
Theater?
Yeah, so hard to believe.
But theater was like forbidden way back then, right? Orange City didn't have a theater until like a couple years ago. My grandpa said you had to go to Alton to see a movie. This fancy doctor was in theater?
Stage, as in plays. Isaac, I don't think our man was really into church and stuff.
Can we read what he wrote?
How's your Dutch?
Same as your Latin.
I'm betting it wasn't trash. I'm sure it wasn't.
Okay. But is there any way of getting a look?
Now, keep your voices down, please. We're in the Literatuur Museum in the Royal Library, The Hague, and the time is the present. This is Jaap de Jong and Cora Dijkstra, reporters for a print and online magazine based in Utrecht. They are also trying to dig up a story on this Dutch-American doctor from way long ago, a man who seems so very interesting. Strewn all around the table before them are papers and pages. Cora has been hard at work while Jaap has just now arrived.
I'd like to think we're getting somewhere, but things seem never-ending.
Sorry I couldn't come yesterday, but it looks like you've got a lot finished already. I spoke to the boss briefly last night. He wants us to remember the deadline.
Remind me?
Next Tuesday.
It's gonna be tight, but I'm glad you're here.
So what kind of good things are you discovering about this Dr. de l'Espinasse?
Adolf Frederick Henry, a mouthful of names.
People here have been helpful?
Oh, very much so, as long as you play by the rules. I could stay here forever with all this old stuff.
You're getting somewhere.
Oh yes, this is all de l'Espinasse, all of it. Box 1, what he was up to when he studied medicine at Utrecht, all the way up to 1842 when he graduated.
Some of it looks fragile.
Oh yeah, if you don't wear the gloves, the staff will throw you into the canal. Box 2 has his writings concerning social and political issues, and box 3 has everything to do with medicine. That guy loved to write on all kinds of subjects. I'm impressed, I'm not kidding. He could fill a whole shelf, and what's here deals only with his life in the Netherlands.
He went to America when?
1870. Box 1 should be enough, though. Box 1 has documentation on Utrecht. Up to 1842 is going to be perfect. And all these items have archivist notes. Helpful. Says here that he and a friend began a student newspaper, first of its kind, and that newspaper's on microfilm. I haven't looked at it yet, though. And look at this. I found it just before you came. A 5-act play on a medieval countess, none other than Jacoba van Byron.
Terrible story. All those aristocrats weaseling her out of her property, even 3 of her 4 husbands.
Yeah, love among the upper class in the 15th century. Gender equality was a couple centuries away. You know the story, but she did seem to marry husband number 4 for love. And check this out, this play that the doctor wrote, it was even produced in a theater in Amsterdam. Can you believe it? That guy was no slouch, let me tell you, and he wrote it in 1840, 1840, when he was 21 years old. That's like phenomenal.
Well, maybe it was trash.
Well, reviews were a little ho-hum. Interesting dialogue, but hardly groundbreaking, that sort of thing. But even that his play made a stage is remarkable. He was just a kid.
Wait a minute. This is wrong. I think you have the writings of another man, a man named Joris Bromnik.
That pseudonym is on several booklets. Our literary wonder was fond of pseudonyms for some reason. Listen to this, my cousin Zachary. A little humor, it seems. True Physiology of the Student, the works of Joris Bromnik. And here too, A Room in the House of Jan Sauli. The note says it's a comedy about a medical quack.
What is this? Thoughts and remarks on the new medical rules set in place by the government? 1842? Opinionated? There's a note here that says he had a point. Smart guy.
Oh, you're not going to believe this, yeah, but in 1950s, the Royal Netherlands Society of Medicine celebrated an anniversary just a half a century ago. Let me read this to you. It is amazing. It's from their anniversary booklet. Dr. A.F.H. de l'Espinasse
That's our guy.
was the founder of a number of regional societies of physicians in the 1840s in the province of Overijssel, which led to the formation of the RNSM. Therefore, Dr. de l'Espinasse can rightfully be called the father of our society.
Amazing. We should have no problems coming up with an article. I can stay for another hour. I'll read this, and this, and this too.
I'll read the rest. Just think. All of this came because of a note from some little town in the States somewhere. A place called Orange City. Imagine, Orange City. You have any idea where that is?
And now we go outdoors to a park bench in de l'Espinasse's hometown in Hasselt, the Netherlands, just north of Zwolle, province of Overijssel. We're going to listen in on a conversation between 2 medical professionals, 2 Dutch doctors. Dr. van der Stoel is reading a paper. Dr. Bakker walks by. By the way, it's 1870.
Yeah, Bakker, do you have a minute? I want to show you something.
Not long.
Did you see this curious ad in the Overijssel provincial paper a few days ago?
No time for gossip, Van der Stoel. I'm too busy. But yes, I saw it.
I couldn't believe my eyes. A public sale at the house of our colleague, de Lespinazi. At his house, for sale. House contents and furnishings, very well maintained. AFH de Lespinazi.
I saw it.
Yeah, and everything too. Several tables, chairs, mirrors, paintings and bookcases, beds, mattresses, carpets, sofas, a little piano, and some musical instruments. And the complete pharmacy. What happened there, you think? So promising a young man.
He's already moved and told to America.
A flourishing practice, an excellent reputation in the medical field. He's financially strapped, maybe, or tired of his practice. He wants perhaps more time to write.
My sister says, word is maybe a scandal.
But the man just got married, no? Second wife?
2 years ago, I know this too. His wife and eldest daughter did not go with him. His daughter, it is said, wanted to stay here with his stepmother. Son Geisbert's still in medical school. He also wants to be a physician.
Very strange, very awkward. He took only the two youngest girls.
And distressing, whatever the reason. With him, I have always been cordial. You too?
Oh, yes, yes.
And he's most able. I have been prescribing his anti-fever pills. Myself, they are very helpful.
We will miss him. He could be contrary, and he was not afraid to let me know where he thought I was wrong.
Always out front with his viewpoints. Maybe he will do well in America. You know, too, Vanderstoel, he would not bleed his patients, even when they wanted it done.
I read his article about promoting chloroform in obstetrics. He spoke to me once about finding these rural people so superstitious. How they used folk remedies whenever possible.
More than anyone I know. He equated their superstition with the Christian faith. You read, perhaps, his articles in the Free Thinker magazine? A bit too radical for me.
He didn't know how to stay out of trouble with the city council and with others, too.
Good grief, I must visit a patient. Ja, well, all that's true. But look what I carry with me wherever I go. It's de Lepinasi's pocketbook of knowledge and the art of healing, 1854. I wouldn't walk into a patient's house without it.
And I have another one, a very helpful book about obstetrics that he published with his father. Never any doubt about this man's brilliance. I can't help thinking he'll do well in America, you know. Have himself a nice practice in New York where they will like him. Bonjour, mon ami.
Good day to you. My wife says she has her eye on that little piano at his sale.
And now back to the present, back here in Orange City, where our students are hunting down the family story for some school assignment, trying hard to piece together a story as captivating as a puzzle. And who was this man anyway? Not that it's easy, the going is rough.
The immigrant records don't show a De Lespinazi family. Too bad. We don't know what ship he was on or the exact date of the voyage.
Why did he come here? Why Orange City?
A lot of Dutch people, maybe?
He didn't have any family here.
The first record for him says Chicago, in the census of 1870. I made a photocopy. The date of the census interview was August 10.
He had a sale in Hossel in April of that year, right? And he's in Chicago already in August?
Maybe earlier. The census said he had property in an area of Illinois where there were other Dutch immigrants, a place called South Holland, a little burg probably eaten up by the city today. His worth was estimated at $2,000, and he had $1,500 on hand, more than most immigrants.
So much for huddled masses. Anything else? His 2 daughters are listed.
And their ages, 12 and 5. But there's more, a housekeeper, Charlotte Box, 25 years old. And voila, Dutch-born.
And he took her with? Do I smell some hanky-panky?
Wouldn't you like that? I thought that at first too, but apparently the Box family emigrated to Chicago a few years earlier. Say, would you happen by chance to know what really big thing happened in Chicago in 1871?
First Cubs game? I don't know. World's Fair? I hate tests.
Most of the city was destroyed, burned down by a fire that spread even to Wisconsin and Michigan.
You're not thinking...
I'm not kidding. The good doctor's place was in it, and he lost everything.
So he didn't rebuild? He just pulled up stakes and left? And came here?
Shenandoah.
What? Tennessee?
Iowa, you idiot. Shenandoah, Iowa. Bought the land and apparently wanted to farm.
A medical doctor who writes all this stuff about medicine, and he wanted to run cattle. How'd that work out for him?
Look, Bean Brain, I'm the one putting in all the work here. It's your turn now, and I won't even assign you anything from out of state. Why did the good doctor...
Who wasn't always so good.
Why did he leave Shenandoah, Iowa, and shuffle along way up here to the far corner of the state when there wasn't much around at all back then? What on earth brought him here?
I gotta find out?
I'm on strike. I'm done.
You trust me?
No, but I'm quitting. It's all in your hands now, bozo.
Shenandoah, huh? Where is that anyway?
Let's stay in Orange City, but go back 150 years to visit the home of Henry Hospers. That's Henry himself, as you might have guessed, seated at a table. He and his wife, Hendrina, were Orange City royalty. He's the only one of the pioneers who has a town named after him. And now, tonight, he's just come home from a meeting with the Reverend Sonia Bolts, who is himself something of a pope in the new colony.
So, did you come to some conclusions maybe this morning?
We discussed the matter at some length, especially the advantages of another physician here, one who speaks the Holland language. I wish it weren't true, but some people have great trouble understanding Dr. Plum's English. He knows no Dutch, not one word.
But Dr. Plum is a fine man. He's a Christian too, even though he speaks English. Had you spoken to Stegeman about this Dr. de L'Espinasse character before you met with the Dominie? Hardly a Dutch name either, you think? So foreign sounding. I can't believe he would fit in well with our people, the Dijkstras, Venemas, Banstras, Nanningas, the Westerns.
I spoke to Stegeman. Our own doctor had left Hazlitt for Pella when he was a young man, but his recollection was that Dr. L'Espinasse was very able. And yes, you heard it right. He was an active Freemason. That's why members of Stegeman's church couldn't go with him.
So all you know about him is in that pamphlet he wrote in, where was it again?
Shenandoah. A town named Shenandoah. He appreciated the letter I wrote to him praising his observations about settlements in Iowa. He did his research, not always positive about what he thought of American ways. He thinks the Yankees are too hard-nosed.
That may well be true. We've seen it ourselves in Pella.
I have his booklet right here somewhere.
It's in the front room. I was reading it while you were out.
He wrote extensively and knowledgeably, too, about the fertile soil and the railroads. They have one there now, a brand new railroad. Maybe you've read about it already. His observations about Iowa's geography, climate, the cost of land, what tools are needed for farming, and the general state of the legal practice.
So if it is so great there, what again was the name of that town?
Shenandoah.
Odd name. Why would he want to move there?
He wished to farm, but there was a fire and everything burned. Can you imagine? He wrote to say the very same disaster had befallen him in Chicago. Both homes burned totally up, as if disaster follows him.
Very sad and strange. Is he perhaps a hypochondriac? Or maybe someone in his family?
You mean pyromaniac, Frau? No, I doubt it. But I wrote to him about Sioux County. So he sees coming here as an opportunity to relocate among his native Dutch in our clean and fair city.
No Dutch people in Shenandoah?
None. And we need someone with his writing skills. The pamphlet, you soon see how well he writes. We need someone to advertise our colony among the Dutch in the United States and in the Netherlands. We need many more good Dutch-speaking settlers here to make our colony prosper.
Is Dominie Volks not a little fearful about the man? I am.
He thinks that the righteous people of Orange City will be a good influence on him, our fine Christian people. And we need a Dutch-speaking position. That's why we invited him to our colony. Nothing definite yet, to talk about what maybe could happen.
Just because he speaks Holland.
Well, we'll see, Andrina. I promise you, you will see.
And now, 150 years later, we're back with our high school students and their difficult history assignment to write a paper about a town doctor who once, very long ago, walked the streets of Orange City.
So you found a translation of that booklet De L'Espinasse wrote about Sioux County? You were at the college?
In the archives, the new Dutch settlement in Sioux County, Iowa, with a huge subtitle, An Eminently Successful Enterprise, written for the benefit of countrymen and immigrants. Can you imagine? It was printed in Amsterdam in 1875.
And so, what did you learn?
He thinks it's a really perfect place. De Volksfriend. Something about the Volksfriend.
Volksvreen, the local Dutch language paper.
I know what he's up to. He's trying to encourage immigration to Sioux County. Listen, the groves that were planted in Sioux County had tempered the winter wind. The soil is superb. In September, there is no damaging night frost like in Wisconsin and Illinois. And never any mist because Sioux County is up on a high plateau. Yeah, sure. And all the kids are above average and really good looking.
You've learned Dutch?
Well, Google does.
The climate is healthier than in New York State and does not have that deadly mist atmosphere found there. In Michigan, there is a lot of snow, and they have to plant their crops between the tree stumps.
Business 101. He's destroying the competition. Listen, it's 1875. Isn't there something missing?
Charles Dyke's Story of Sioux County talks about it.
Grasshoppers. Not a word here about grasshoppers. And they destroyed everything 2 years running before De L'Espinasse even came to visit.
In those grasshopper years, De Volksvreen never wrote about it either. Very hush-hush.
A Volksfriend? I know it's a newspaper, but what does the word mean?
The Volksfriend, or friend of the people.
Friend of Orange City people, anyway. Just go ahead and hoodwink the others. Didn't even mention the hoppers.
So much for transparency.
Well, hold on. Grasshoppers would sometimes skip whole fields. Henry Hospers must have believed, really believed, in the great future of the settlement.
People like Henry Hospers thought of Orange City as some kind of future cultural prosperous capital for the whole region. A little town in South Dakota was once called West Orange, like a baby Orange City.
I read there was once an opera house. And listen, Gracie, De Lespinasse and some others began a kind of brainy club to make sure that Dutch culture and language would not be polluted by Americans.
Hey, I can't believe it. You're into this, aren't you?
Well, football's over. I got nothing better to do.
And now we'll yo-yo back 150 years once more, staying in Orange City, but stopping off for a minute or two at the office of the Volksvriend. It's 1875, and as the kids have mentioned, we're in the middle of a grasshopper plague of biblical proportions. It will threaten the very existence of what's being built here, threaten life itself in the new colony. The entire region is struggling, but one bright spot is the success of that same Dutch newspaper, which circulates widely throughout many Dutch communities in other states. Editor Agel is editing copy in front of him. Beside him is his typesetter, Mr. Hoekstra.
Those 2 articles submitted by De Lespinasse, you read them already, did you?
A good one about vaccinations. Just the right time for our people to read it.
Some people oppose it, you know, for religious reasons. When the mortality rate has so sharply decreased, tell me, Hoekstra, how can you argue with science?
And the other 2 articles this week from the doctor. We need more sick people, so he finds less time to write. What are you going to do with the other one?
De Lespinasse seems to like a good argument, you know, but must he criticize Dr. Plum? Problems we have enough of. We have enough of them all around. We don't need our 2 doctors blasting away at each other.
Thank goodness Dr. Plum sends his fiery opinions to the Sioux County Herald. If we had both of their notes of anger, there'd be no space for anything news at all.
I am not a fan of De Lespinasse, but we need good copy, Hoekstra. Copy that will make people want to read. And the learned doctor, for sure, that man sells papers.
And he writes very well.
None better, none better.
He feels so strongly about things. About our schools here, he's not so thrilled.
Good Dr. Plum is not so pessimistic. And of course, we need better teachers, and of our own kind.
Hollanders. De Lespinasse has no use for Yankee teachers.
He's a physician's son, Hoekstra. In Holland, he attended a Latin school, went to university. He speaks multiple languages. He's so learned that no one here can keep up.
You can, Mr. Agel.
The letters I receive from what the doctor writes, nothing else we publish raises such a stink.
Most people I know don't agree with his reaction to Dr. Plum in our last issue about religious teaching in public schools. I know he and De Lespinasse was so agitated, just a bit quarrelsome. A public school must stand apart from religion, no prayer, no Bible reading. It's the opposite of what my folks believe and what they say. And my son's paper publishes that blasphemy. I just hear my father saying it.
What he says is that religious instruction belongs in the home and in catechism classes. Surely that's not wrong.
Dr. Plum says it's no matter, since in schools there's so very little time for devotions.
Well, I suppose I'll have to include it in our next issue. Is that okay? Will your father throw you out, Hoekstra? It's a good topic for discussion anyway, yes? And that's what the newspaper is for. You agree?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll set both articles right away. Second page?
Bottom of the first. That's what people will read first anyway.
And now we'll take a walk up the street from the Volksvriend office to the home of a very ordinary Orange City husband and wife, circa 1880, who are having coffee together and solving right here most of the world's major problems. He has a newspaper, probably the Volksvriend, right in front of him.
That new doctor is enterprising, isn't he? He came up with the design for the windmill.
Patented in Washington, too. And Lendrick built it. I saw the beams when they were delivered. Heavy ones. 16 by 24 inches.
It's so tall. When I walk back from Jana and Sioux Center, I can see it from afar. Den Hartog can grind grain now for the whole community. You know how long it took on my coffee grinder, taking turns turning that handle for hours and hours.
Listen to this. It's about the doctor. He likes to build all right. He's putting an addition to his house. And that's where he'll have a pharmacy.
Pharmacy, you say? What is he going to do about the old pharmacy?
Well, Mr. Clovord is going to live in there. It says here, but the old pharmacy will just be a regular house now.
I remember the other property he built on that same block.
Who here in town doesn't remember that? The modern church. We don't live in the Netherlands anymore. Think of it. Built the same time as our Reformed church.
That did not last long before it was sold and pulled away.
Our church still stands. It's the Lord's work, Shirley.
That little tower on top, the buyer took it down.
And now it's an outhouse. Say what you will about his religious views, Ma, but we know, don't we, that he knows his doctrine. He put my right arm back in the socket after my fall.
And for healing our Jana, I am so grateful. It's 4 years ago already when she was cured of cholera, only 19. Engaged to Cornelis, we almost lost her pa, our only daughter.
He showed me once upon a time the clock in his office.
Oh, from the old country?
A gift from the town council in some town I can't remember.
Hasselt it was, the province of Overijssel.
Yeah, Overijssel. He did so very good work there during the cholera epidemic.
Well, nothing we have is fancy, but if I had something wonderful, I swear I would give it to him for healing Jana. And now we have grandchildren too, I would, Pa. He liked the Balkenbrai I brought him.
You brought him Balkenbrai?
He is a good man and he has no wife.
A little off in his views, maybe.
But a good, good man.
Just a block east, downtown, Henry Hospers is trying to persuade a young man named Ellerbrook to start studying medicine. There are great plans afoot. The good doctor from Hasselt has plans to begin a medical college, an institute where he can himself teach medicine.
This is a great opportunity, Ellerbrook. You know pharmacy, and therefore already a little about medicine.
Mr. Hospers, I don't know if I'm smart enough to practice medicine.
You don't know if you don't try. As a young man in Pella, who would have thought that I would be smart enough to become the leader of a whole colony here? No. Maybe the father of a dozen good Dutch children, but not a whole colony.
But you are Henry Hospers, surveyor, entrepreneur, a school teacher, and even once Mayor of Pella.
And you have potential and opportunity and youth. I'm sure you'll pass all the requirements to be a student at the De La Panacea Academy. You are 19. You speak English and Dutch. And your behavior is without reproach. I'm right about that, Ja?
Well, there's 5 other fellows have already signed up, including Geisbert, his son. I could register, but really a medical student, you think? Makes me a little banal.
Dr. De La Panacea told me it would take a year and a half for preparatory knowledge and the theory and practice of medicine, even surgery and obstetrics.
The what? I don't even know what that word means.
Oh, it has much to do with, well, you'll find out.
We'll meet in the doctor's house.
When the courthouse is finished, the supervisors will set aside room for the academy. Temporarily, Dr. Lespinazi hopes to lay the foundation of a building for a university. where our people can not only study medicine, but law and theology.
6 evenings a week. My Carrie, you know Carrie Slystra, she won't like that. Me so often gone.
Maybe so, but she'll like being married to a doctor.
Let's check in finally with our 2 high school researchers who were given an assignment that's forced them to visit places and planted ideas in their heads they never knew existed. They're well on the trail now, both of them, and as you'll see, they're even excited about it because this man, this odd doctor, would likely upset the apple cart in Orange City right now were he practicing medicine in the local hospital. Both Isaac and Gracie know their teacher assigned them a hot item, a man who was a real mover and a shaker. As they learn, the voices from the past give them all kinds of help.
I would have liked to hold those pages myself, you know, the real ones, the actual pages from like 100 years ago.
You're perfectly impossible at math. Make that 150 years. But the staff at the archives were great. And it's not like you can't read the paper. That's not a problem. And I'm glad she told us to look at the ads. I don't think I've ever used a microfilm machine before. Did you? That was really cool. You could read those old-fashioned ads really well.
You could even photocopy from the microfilm machine. I copied my great-great-grandpa's ad for the biggest, fattest hog you ever saw.
The doctor didn't sell hogs, but just about everything else under the sun. He was a living, walking Walmart.
Andre, go to Dr. De L'Espinassi's pharmacy for a bottle of that machine oil he is advertising for my sewing machine. And don't dally. No stopping to talk to Albert.
And get some also in a separate bottle. The ad says it also cleans up potato beetles.
Dr. Gillespie says you can buy the freshest oranges and lemons right there in his pharmacy. Lemonade will go well on the 4th of July.
Best selection of cigars, and I'm out. I'll send Garrett later for some wine.
When it gets dark.
Yes, of course, Mother.
Gillespie was a brilliant doctor, but look at once what he has to sell in the pharmacy. Candies and varnishes and paints and wine even, and hard liquor.
I just bought his tincture against summer sickness. He has bronchitis medicine and gallbladder pills and pills for phlegm. People trust him, even if they don't like some of his views. They trust him, trust his judgment. And all the while, Ellabrook is advertising medicine from quacks, and everybody knows it.
I didn't like being his competitor when I opened my drugstore, but what could I do? I just could not hack those medical studies. But I'm still somewhat in the field.
It's so hard for my father to get the people to pay, although he gives a discount when they pay him cash for medications.
It's too bad I can't be home with Father during the week. His bronchitis is getting worse. Those night visits in the country don't help.
So, you gonna write this thing, or you want me to?
You're asking?
I'm asking.
You're serious.
Well-made offer. I kind of like the guy. I don't think I'd care to argue with him about anything. He was a wild man.
And a good doctor.
No kidding. He became my hero. Sort of. I made a copy of his picture and put it up in my room. Who the heck is that? Mom says. You really want to know? I said. So she says, it's some kind of huge story or something. And I tell her, you ain't lying, it's a huge story. And we still don't know it all. So, Miss Gracie, I'll do the writing. Although, I think it might be more fun to do it together.
You know, we could end our report by talking about that little booklet he wrote just before he left the Netherlands.
Sure, but we didn't find it. Remember?
But the title is so sweet. It was, I guess, a plea not to forget him.
And you know that how again?
Twalt vergiet me naches.
Sheesh. Your Dutch is getting downright exceptional.
I picked it up from Grandma. She's a heck of a coach. I think ending the thing with that title, 12 Forget-Me-Nots, is just the right touch.
Sort of like, I'm leaving now, and maybe you didn't like me as much as I'd hoped, but don't forget me. Just remember, I once walked the same streets you do.
Sort of like us.
What you saying, lady?
Sort of like what we did with the guy, you know? We're not forgetting him. This paper is going to be our little forget-me-not. No, our little forget-him-not.
That's like super corny.
I know. Please forgive me.
You're forgiven. Anyway, I'm not forgetting that midnight hike in the cemetery. Still sounds wild. Tell you what, let's go somewhere so we can talk about how we're going to pull this thing together. My treat.
Oh, no. I demand it. Dutch treat.